Radhe Radhe. Today is Saturday, 10th September 2022, and Mummy and I are here to record our recap video for our Bhagavad Gita study session for Chapter 6.
Radhe Radhe, everybody.
We started out with our usual few quiz questions in this journey for Chapter 6, and then went ahead to cover Chapter 6, verse 6 and verse 7. So a few questions, you can go back and practice them. And then Chapter 6, verse 6, foe to friend. Mummy, I'll have you recite that first.
Bandhuratmatmanastasya yenatmaivatmana jitaha anatmanastu shatrutve vartetatmaiva shatruvat.
So Chapter 6, verse 6, continuing from the very, very important Chapter 6, verse 5, where we learned about the two roles that the mind can play. It can be our best friend or it can be our worst enemy. Naturally, here now in Chapter 6, verse 6, we learn from Sri Krishna that if we have conquered the mind, that is, we've elevated ourselves from the lower mind to the higher mind, then it can be our friend. If we fail to do so, however, then the mind works like an enemy. So we learned again that the Vedic scriptures place a lot of emphasis on what the ramification or consequences of negative thoughts is, and they can really be harmful and dangerous. In fact, when we often think that people are our enemies or external events are bad for us, it's really the demons that are inside us, demons such as lust, anger, greed, and envy. Those are the ones that cause us to fester and dwell upon negative thoughts for days and weeks, and therefore become harmful to us, as well as detrimental to our spiritual progress. In fact, there are examples of people who have had their minds tormented with depression and anxiety, even though externally it seems that they were very, very successful. So it's again very, very important to utilize our mind in the right perspective. Again, elevating ourselves, using the soul and the intellect to direct the lower mind and the senses so that we do not get distracted in this realm of the material world. So that is with the following up with the example from the Dhammapads, the repetition we talked about, the Punarukti aspect, where the same few words or phrases here that are negative, they can make us dwell upon misery and be just attached to that, or if we don't say those out, we can actually escape from anger. Again, the importance of not having resentment and not bearing a grudge. You don't want grudge to be like that tenant staying rent-free in your head. We saw the example also from Sadhan Bhakti Tattva, again, not to get swayed by the often overwhelming power of the lower mind and the senses. Therefore, Swamiji concludes in the commentary and tells us that if we keep reminding ourselves that we need to have our intellect control the mind, the intellect discerns and discriminates amongst all the various thoughts that the mind produces, we can get ahead and make rapid spiritual progress. You know, having the choice for good thoughts is our option and our freedom and responsibility. And again, we do not want to be prisoners of our minds. That is Chapter 6, verse 6. Then we went ahead to Chapter 6, verse 7, conquer, conquer. Mummy, I'll have you recite that.
Jitatmanah prashantasya paramatma samahitaha shitoshna sukha dukkheshu tatha manapamanayoho.
So Chapter 6, verse 7, here now, we are seeing the first of three verses where Sri Krishna describes symptoms or attributes of those who are yoga arudaha, those who are advanced in this spiritual process. And again, we get a reminder that connects to Chapter 2, verse 14, when we first saw a couple of pairs of dualities, and we also learned that all these senses, these perceptions, they are temporary and fleeting. And so yogis are those who have conquered the mind as well as risen above such dualities. They're neither attached to them nor are they averse from them, but they are really peaceful and steadfast in their devotion to God. So that's the connection with chapter 2, verse 14. And again, here, really being, concur in agreement, perhaps, equanimous with whatever happens around us, even through the pairs of dualities. Practicing that equanimity is what is an important step to take along the spiritual journey, yog via yog. The practices of yog to help us attain yog, union with God. So again, as a helpful reminder, Swamiji tells us there are two places the mind can exist. One is the material realm of Maya. The other is the divine realm, the abode of God. As we purify ourselves through spiritual practice and experience, we really can get our mind attached to God and practice a sense of samadhi, deep meditation upon God. Again, Rup Dhyan that we have talked about as early as chapter 3, verse 30. Mummy, I'll pass it to you to share with us any Sanskrit words we need to learn and any other observations you would like to make.
So first important Sanskrit word I want everybody to keep in mind is anatmanaha. Anatmanaha means those people who have unconquered mind. So what happens for those anatmanaha who haven't conquered their mind? What happens?
Well, we're going to have it be one of the two roles that the mind plays. And in this case, the mind is going to become the worst enemy.
Yes. For those who have conquered their mind, the mind becomes their friend. So that is where the intellect comes in the scene, whereby we feed good wisdom and good knowledge to our intellect and let the higher mind control the lower mind, so that we can attach our mind to God and have control over our negative thoughts. Another word which I want you to look at it is samahitaha. Samahitaha means steadfast. So how do you become steadfast? When you know to remain equanimous in any situation. Whatever the situation is, hot or cold, joy or sorrow, happiness or distress, whatever the situation be, once you have control over your mind through the intellect, so then you remain steadfast, you don't get disturbed. So two important words. And Gagan, you can decide the English word. I think pernicious looks very good to me.
Yes, thank you for that. I agree. Pernicious is something we can keep in mind. And again, this being, of course, harmful or dangerous. Therefore, as a reminder that we do not want to get associated with aspects that are pernicious or dangerous or harmful or detrimental to our spiritual progress. That will be an important English word to take away for today.
Yeah. So
Last
basically,
comment. Yeah.
these verses are very, very important, which teach us to implement the wisdom, knowledge of Bhagavad Gita in our day-to-day life, because every other day or every few days, we are tormented by different opposite situations, which are not to our liking, but by controlling our mind, by controlling our thoughts through the intellect. And when we feed our intellect with good knowledge, we can have control over these thoughts, and we can be steadfast, or we can remain equanimous in any situation. So that is our responsibility, how we keep on having control our thoughts from negative to positive, from unhappy to happy. This is all in our own hands, and we need to learn this from this knowledge from Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, and also a reminder that the importance of the word Mummy mentions, samahitaha, steadfast. A reminder from I think again chapter 2, many branched versus one pointed. So in our spiritual journeys, not being distracted by so many aspects around us, really being one pointed, just like Arjun's focus with his bow and arrow, for instance, as we consider applying those aspects in our spiritual journeys. Final comment, perhaps, Bilji pointed out nicely the use of Paramatma, which Mummy mentioned as well here. Really, perhaps because, of course, it uses the word Atma in both cases, Jitatmanaha, Paramatma, but also that very important subtle difference, Paramatma, soul, the supreme soul dwelling and residing inside us. As a reminder, we've covered long ago in the introduction. I'm going to try to find it live over here. There is the example that Swamiji has given of the distinction between Bhagwan, Paramatma, Ishwar, and so on. So I think in the important terms section, Swamiji has around here covered God as Bhagwan, soul as Atma. Here he mentions the different uses. So we encourage everybody to take a look at that in the introduction.
Well, basically, we are the soul and we are the fragmental part of that supreme soul. That is what we have to understand, And the soul is here in our heart region, and the Paramatma, that supreme soul, is also here in our heart. And now, again, the same story comes up whereby basically we are all the time into worldly pleasures and we are busy in enjoying the worldly pleasure. So we are facing on the other side. And with good wisdom and knowledge from Bhagavad Gita, we can learn how to start facing that Paramatma, that supreme soul. Our tiny soul, individual soul, if it starts facing the supreme soul, then but natural, we will be on the right path and we will continue to progress on our spiritual path. It will give us lot of equanimity in life.
Yes, so with that, hopefully everyone continues to have a blissful spiritual journey ahead. We look forward to meeting all of you next week, Saturday, 17 September 2022, for the next round of verses in this Bhagavad Gita study series for chapter 6. Thank you. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.